Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is the day number 4 for the Microsoft Security Operations Analyst, the SC200. Today, we are finishing up with the 8 modules that this entire course covers. We still have session number 5 for tomorrow, but tomorrow it will be an exam preparation session. So, welcome everyone, and let's start. I will start by showing you the session schedule for today. For the C200, we have for today's lectures and labs modules 7 and 8. Module 7 is for create detections and perform investigations using Microsoft Sentinel. And the lessons, threat detection with Microsoft Sentinel Analytics, automation in Microsoft Sentinel, threat response with Sentinel playbooks, and security incident management in Microsoft Sentinel. There is a lab for Module 7 that is to create detections and perform investigations using Microsoft Sentinel. And for Module 8, perform threat hunting in Microsoft Sentinel. The topics that we are going to cover today is to explain threat hunting concepts in Microsoft Sentinel and threat hunting with Microsoft Sentinel. And there is a lab for Module 8 also that is the lab for threat hunting in Microsoft Sentinel. So I will start presenting the module number 7. Just give me a second here. For create detections and perform investigations using Microsoft Sentinel, you have lesson 1, threat detection with Microsoft Sentinel Analytics. In this lesson, we are going to cover explain the importance of Sentinel Analytics, explain different types of analytic rules, create rules from templates, create new analytic rules and queries using the analytics rule wizard, and manage rules with modifications. Sentinel Analytics provides a solution that we can use to detect some potential threats and vulnerabilities in our organization. So Sentinel Analytics analyzes data from different sources to identify correlations and anomalies. By using analytic rules, we can trigger alerts based on the attack techniques that are used by known malicious actors. And we can set up these rules to help ensure that our SOC, Security Operations Center, is alerted to potential security incidents in our environment. With the proper analytics rules, we can get insights into where an attack originated from, what resources were compromised, a potential data lost, along with the timeline for an incident. Common security analytics use cases will include, for example, identification of compromised accounts, user behavior analysis to detect potentially suspicious patterns, network traffic analysis to locate trends indicating potential attacks, detection of data exfiltration by attackers and detection of insider threats, investigation of incidents, threat hunting, and so on. Certain threats can go undetected for months. So combining the data gathered by multiple tools and products with the power of threat intelligence, it can help us to detect, to analyze, and to mitigate insider threats. With analytic rules has different types. With analytic rules, we can configure notifications and alerts based on data coming from the sources that are connected to Sentinel. We can search for potential threats by using the built-in analytic rules that Azure Sentinel Analytic provides. And there are currently 4 types of analytic rules. The Microsoft Security ones, with this type of rule, we can configure Microsoft Security solutions that are connected to Sentinel and we can configure um, different security solutions to pass their alerts to Sentinel. The another type of, well, we can connect, for example, for the Microsoft security rules, the Microsoft Cloud Application Security, or Defender for Cloud Apps, Defender for Servers, Defender for IoT, Defender for Identity, for Office 365, Azure Active Directory Identity Protection, Defender for Endpoint. Another type of rule is the Fusion one. Fusion alerts can help us to identify anomalous behaviors and suspicious activities at various stages of the cyber kill chain. Fusion correlates multiple security alerts from various products and uses machine learning to detect advanced multi-stage attacks. Some of the common attack detection scenarios that Fusion alerts identify can include, for example, from the um, from the tactics of data exfiltration, data destruction, denial of service, lateral movement, ransomware, and so on. For data exfiltration, we can for suspicious activity can be detected, such as suspicious forwarding rules in Microsoft 365 mailbox after a suspicious sign in to Azure AD account can indicate a compromised user account for the data filtration tactic. For data destruction, this rule can detect anomalous number of unique files that were deleted after a suspicious sign in to Azure AD account. That can signal that a compromised user account was used to destroy data. For the denial of service, it's significant when there is significant number of Azure virtual machines deleted after a suspicious sign in to Azure AD account. That can signal a compromised user account that can be used to destroy the organization's assets. For the tactic of lateral movement, the significant number of impersonation actions that occur after a suspicious sign-in to Azure AD account can indicate a compromised user account that was used for malicious purposes. And finally, there's for the ransomware. After a suspicious sign-in to an Azure AD account, some unusual user behavior used to encrypt data can trigger a ransomware execution alert. Another type of analytic rule is the one with machine learning behavior analytics. Sentinel analytics includes built-in machine learning behavioral analytic rules. We can't edit these built-in rules or review the rule settings. These rules use Microsoft machine learning algorithms to detect suspicious activity. Machine learning algorithms correlate several low fidelity incidents into a high fidelity security incidents. Other type of analytic rule alert is the scheduler alert. Schedule alerts analytic rules provides is basically the highest level of customization that we can create from a rule type. We can define our own KQL, our own custom grade language expression to filter the security events, and we can set up a schedule for the rule to run. There is also near real-time rules or NRT rules. Sentinel near real-time analytic rules offer a fast threat detection and the ability to shorten response times in specific scenarios. So Sentinel near real-time analytic rules provide the up to the minute threat detection out of the box. And this type of rule was designed to be highly responsive by running its query at intervals that just 1 minute apart. This is a view from the analytic rules, and usually we can find out multiple templates that are doesn't necessarily to see all these templates as active alerts. We can use this as a template to activate it, and then to start monitoring the different security conditions here. So we can use some of the existing rule templates to create a single rule and others to create multiple rules with different customization options. The templates that are in use will display the in use label on the template page, and we can observe different properties of the rule, like a severity level. Severity level uh, will indicate the importance of the alert. We can also check on the name of the rule. This provides a meaningful name for the alert rule. We can check on the rule type. This will define the type of the rule. The data source also, this specifies the data source connector that generated the alert. And we can also observe the property of the tactic. And this specifies the techniques and the methodologies in the MITRE attack model used by different kinds of malware. Remember that the MITRE attack is based into a cyber kill chain with multiple tactics, like the data filtration and the others. So, and if we wanted to remember, the MITRE attack is a globally uh, knowledge base of adversary attacks and techniques, and usually Sentinel will have a section for the MITRE attack into its user interface that we can check into the MITRE attack matrix, for example. And then we can also check into the view of the analytic rule templates if there is one or more than one tactic that rule is following based on the MITRE attack framework. If we want to create an analytic rule from the assistant or the wizard, then basically we can just start from the template, and from the template we can start to create and import and create a rule. We have an option to modify some parameters up to the query, the rule query, for example. So we can take that template as a baseline, but if we know what we are doing, then you can just make changes up to the rule query, for example. So a rule that we create from the security template consists of the following elements. We need to specify or accept the name. This will be pre-populated from the name of the rule template. We have an option to reconfigure. This will include a description, which is optional, but we can use it to provide more details on the creation of the alerts. We can also see a status as another property. So this indicates where the analytic rule is enabled or disabled. Then we need to specify the analytic rule logic. So this indicates the source of the alert from one of the Microsoft security services. We can see a property for filter by severity. We can use to tune alerts from a source base on the severity level, which can be high, medium, low, or informational. And we can use a property for include a specific alert to filter alerts that contains a specific text in their name, or to exclude the specific alerts, to use the filter alerts that don't contain a specific text in their name. Creating a custom rule from the schedule query rule type will provide us with the highest level of customization, and we can define our own KQL code. We can set a schedule to run the alerts, or we can provide an automated action by associating an Azure Sentinel playbook. To create an analytic rule in the portal under Sentinel, we can select Analytics, and in the top menu bar, we can select on Create, and then select the Schedule Query rule. We can connect also several data sources to Sentinel, which can quickly generate many security alerts. To adjust the noise and the filter, the more important threats detected, we should manage the analytic rules on an ongoing basis. And this will help ensure that our rules will remain useful and efficient in detecting potential security threats. We can perform different or 4 types of actions on existing active rules. We can select from edit, disable, duplicate, or delete. If we decide to edit the rule, we can modify the existing rule by selecting the edit option in the details pane. To edit a rule, we navigate the same pages that we did in creating the rule, and the previous inputs that we used to create the rule are going to be preserved. We can change any properties of the rule to further tune the results of the threat detection. If we select to disable the rules, we can disable a rule when we are performing an activity that can trigger the rule alert. Disable rules will retain their configuration and we can enable them again at a later time. If we select to duplicate a rule, when we duplicate the rule contains all the configuration provided from the original rule, and we can further modify the configuration based on our requirements. And finally, we can just select to delete the rules. Deleting the rule prompts us for confirmation before Sentinel Analytics remove it from the set of active rules. Next lesson is for the, automation in Microsoft Sentinel. Because Sentinel is a multiple security tools into one. One of those tools is the security or security operations and automated responses, the SOAR functionality. Security orchestration, sorry, and automation and response. And to automate, we can specify on Sentinel how Sentinel is going to react on certain conditions, on detections, for example. So and there is two options. We can set automation rules that allow a user to centrally manage the automation of incident handling, or we can use playbooks. And a playbook will be a collection of response and remediation actions and logic that can be run from Sentinel as a routine. A playbook is built into an Azure resource, and that Azure resource is a logic app. And what's a logic app? A logic app, it's we can see it as an application that we can create a multi-step or multiple connections that reacts on events and that we can automate some workflows. So we can find it, for example, because a logic app can be created with a designer, and that designer will use data connectors, and those data connectors can be following a series of steps or actions up to those actions, for example, making decisions to, if you have a yes or no, go for one action and for another. Every single action that we can specify, every single data connector will be an API connector from the context of the logic app. So maybe here our first event will be reacting on an alert that is triggered. And then if an alert is triggered, if I know what type of alert is, then maybe my first step will be, I don't know, maybe just running a function app. A function app will trigger some compute to run some code, then to do something as the exits for the function. This can be connected to, I don't know, a database or something like that. But at the same time that a new registry is being queried or added to a database, maybe that event of a new registry into the database, maybe this could be connected to a queue for decoupling communication through applications and so on. So we can automate a process to automate responses basically by dragging and dropping those connectors. But well, that logic app needs to be associated in a playbook in Sentinel. The playbook would be like the automated reaction. We can check on the demonstration on our portal. From the Sentinel service, let's say that I take in the Sentinel one. We can take a look at the configuration and going for the analytics. Now, if you remember for just from yesterday, connectors in Sentinel are we can use it to start ingesting data to the log workspace that Sentinel is using to feed, let's say, the main data repository that is the log and workspace. Now, data connectors from Logic App are completely different type of connectors. There's no relationship between those two. Okay, so here we have a limited number of data connectors available, 124, that eventually this number will start to increase as new connectors being added for Sentinel to connect as data sources. The data connector for Logic App usually are more than this number of connectors, like a 300, 500, or something like that, because every kind of service, Microsoft service, Azure service, and non-Azure service, and other third-party software as a service apps can have a connector, for example. And a quick example of in some demonstration when I'm creating a Logic app, for example, I just use the, for example, two connector for applying a test. The first connector that is like the trigger can be a condition when a new file from the connector of OneDrive for Business is when a new file is created under a personal or work account. In that event, a new file being created into that OneDrive account will be a trigger for event for connecting to another cloud storage file service, like the Google Drive, for example. So I can just look for those connectors on. And now this kind of connectors has nothing to do with the data connector from Sentinel, because I will not never see a data connector from OneDrive here into Sentinel, at least not yet, or a Google Drive data connector for Sentinel. But we can use it for establishing an automated workflow and actually perform operations into those software as a service apps, for example, by configuring our playbook. So into this analytics option, we can see the type of rules that we can create by selecting on the plus to create and to display a dropdown, the schedule rule query, the incident creation rule, NRT rule query rule. The fusion is already turned on by default. We can see it here. So we can find out the 4 types. And by selecting a rule, we can select the options to modify its status. Because this is already enabled, then we can decide to disable or delete it if we want it. If I wanted to create one, the one with the highest customization is the schedule, the new schedule rule, for example. And we can start with the general to specify a name, a description, the number of tactics to follow the MITRE attack framework, the severity, and a status, and an alert rule. Logic that usually it's a KQL, a query, alert enrichment, query scheduling, alert threshold, event grouping, suppression, incident settings, automated response. From here, I can just add a playbook, a rule name, and the possible actions that I would like to run. Run a playbook, change the status, change severity, assign order, add a tag. But in order to select the playbook, I will need to have the Logic app already. So if I'm selecting, I want to run a playbook. And what's your playbook? Well, you don't have one. So you just need to create a new one. And your playbook will be your Logic app. So I need to create that Logic app first in order to create it. Review and create, and then clicking on create at the end. But I'm just missing a couple required parameters on it just to create the rules. One thing will be created, and another one will be work with the status that, okay, I just wanted to create it, but in a disabled state, or later I can just decide to turn on and so on. If we click on the tab for the rule templates, then we can find out multiple type of rules from templates. That this doesn't mean that these are already imported to my Sentinel service and that It doesn't to see it here into the template doesn't mean that they are active, for example. So what I need to do is to start importing this rule, and then I can modify the status to activate it when I need it, for example. Now, the logic app, you can start searching for the logic app service, and I don't have one already, but I can start creating a new one. For example, I can try to create a new resource group that I can call it logic logic app. Let's give a name for this logic app. Let's call it this SC200 playbook. Name needs to be unique globally, so I need to wait for verification with a green check that Azure Websites.net. This logic app will be built into their traditional application service and plan. Plan type will be a standard. The plan size WS1, I think that is okay. No some redundancy so far. Hosting into a storage account. We need a storage. For monitoring, I think that application insights will be optional. I don't need it. Review plus create. And then finally, we can just click to create. And this is going to take a couple of minutes to create the logic app. But now, nothing associated to the logic or to the workflow, because, well, you're just creating the background service. And once that we create the resource, then there's where we can access to the designer. From the designer, we can start dragging and dropping the connectors that we want for that automated response. Okay, while this is being created, let's move on and continue with presentation. For creating an automation rule, we need to follow 4 high-level steps on it. Changing the status of an incident, changing severity of an incident, assigning an incident to an owner, and adding a tag to an incident. Lesson 3 is for threat response with Microsoft Sentinel Playbook. An introduction here. We can explain Microsoft Sentinel security, orchestration, and automated response capabilities. Explore the Sentinel Logic Apps connector. Create a playbook to automate an incident response. And run a playbook on demand in response to an incident. Sentinel playbooks explain. Sentinel is both a security information and event management system and a security orchestration and automated and response solution that is designed for hybrid environments. So we can create security playbooks in Sentinel to respond to alerts. Security playbooks are collections of procedures based on an Azure Logic app that runs in response to an alert. And we can run these security playbooks manually in response to our investigation of an incident, or we can configure an alert to run a playbook automatically. So what is the Azure Logic or the Logic app? Azure Logic app is a cloud service that automates the operation of our business processes. And we use a graphical design tool called the Logic App Designer to arrange the pre-built components into the sequence that we need. And we can also use the code view, and we can write our automated processes in a JSON file form. And let's define now what is a Logic App connector. Because Logic App use connectors to connect to hundreds of services. And a connector is a component that provides an interface to an external service. Now let's take a look at another element that are triggers and actions. Logic App uses triggers and actions, which are defined as follows. A trigger is an event that occurs when a specific set of conditions are satisfied or is satisfied. Triggers activate automatically when conditions are met. For example, a security incident occurs in Sentinel, which is a trigger for an automated action. And an action is an operation that performs a task in the logic app workflow. Actions run when a trigger activates, another action completes, or when a condition is met. Another element is a Sentinel logic app connector. A Sentinel playbook uses a Sentinel logic app connector, and it provides the triggers and the actions that can start the playbook and to perform the finite actions. Currently, there are two triggers from Sentinel logic app connectors when associated with Sentinel. When a response to a Sentinel alert is triggered, and when an Azure Sentinel incident creation rule is triggered. This is how a logic app will look like in a designer when we have the connectors and conditions, for example. As an example, we can add the trigger from an Azure Sentinel connector that when an incident is triggered, we can follow it with an action that identifies the entities from the Sentinel alert, and then another action that sends an email to an Office 365 email account. So Sentinel creates every action as a new step and defines the activity that we are adding to the logic app. The Azure Sentinel connector trigger when a response to Sentinel alert is triggered, and it's providing a dynamic property such as an entity or display name, which can use to fill some inputs. A condition action is an if statement that let the application to perform different actions based on the data that we are processing. It consists of a Boolean expression and two actions. At runtime, the execution engine evaluates the expression and chooses an action based on whether the expression is true or false. We can run a playbook on demand manually from an incident or automatically from an analytic rule. Those are the two possible options. Next lesson is security incident management in Microsoft Sentinel. The topics in this lesson are explaining Sentinel incident management, exploring Sentinel evidence and entity management, and investigate and manage incident resolution. Incident management is the complete process of incident investigation from creation to in-depth investigation and finally to a resolution. So Sentinel provides a complete incident management environment in which we can perform a series of steps. We can use Sentinel to review detailed incident information. We can assign an incident owner, and we can set and maintain. So incident management concepts in Sentinel are, but we have data connectors, and we use data connectors in Sentinel to ingest and to collect data from security-related services. Another concept is events. Sentinel stores events in log and workspaces, and these events contain the detail of security-related events that we want to monitor with Sentinel. Another element is an analytic rule, and we create analytic rules to detect important security events and to generate alerts. So we can create analytic rules by using built-in templates or by using custom query language queries against a log analytic workspaces in Sentinel. We can also find out another concept that is the alerts. So analytic rules generate alerts when they detect important security events, and we can also configure alerts to generate incidents. And there's incidents. Sentinel creates incidents from analytic rule alerts, and incidents can contain multiple related alerts. So we use each incident as a starting point, and it's a tracking mechanism for investigation into security concerns in our environment. Evidence, will display evidence will display how a threat has been identified in Sentinel. So it links us back to the specific resources that we can use to increase our awareness of incident details. And the entities that we can see here as spheres, for example, events, alerts, entities, incidents, and bookmarks. Events link us back to one or more events from the log and workspace associated with Sentinel. We can use events to understand the scope and the frequency of the incident before investigating further. For alerts, most incidents are generated because of an analytic rule alert. Examples of alerts will include a detection of suspicious files or a detection of suspicious user activities or an attempted elevation of the privilege. We have also incident entities, that an entity refers to a network or user resource involved in an event. And we can use entities as an entry point to explore all alerts and correlation associated with that entity. There is also bookmarks that while investigating an incident, um, we might identify events that we want to track or mark for later investigation. And we can preserve the queries run in log analytics by choosing one or more events and designating them as bookmarks. And some of the entity types can include accounts, hosts, IPs, URLs, file hashes. For instance, entities will help us to identify all of the alerts associated with a specific user, the user host machine, and other hosts that the user has connected to. So we can determine which IP addresses are associated with the user in question. We can use the advanced investigation and analysis tools to gather information and to determine remediation steps. To identify and resolve security issues at the organization, we will first want to investigate any incidents. The overview page in Sentinel will provide us a list of the most recent incidents for quick reference. So for more detail and a complete overview of the incidents, we will use the incidents page, which displays all incidents in the current workspace and the details about those incidents. So the incident page provides a complete list of incidents in Sentinel, and it also provides some basic incident information that will include severity, an ID, title, alerts, product names, created time, last update time, owner, and status. And the incident details page provides a description of the incident and list the evidence, listing the entities and the tactics related to the incident. It also contains links to associated workbooks and the analytics rule that generated the incident. Each incident created in Sentinel has manageable metadata attached to it. And this information can help us to set and track the status of an incident from creation to resolution, set and review severity, and assign and track ownership for the incident. Deep analysis. For deep analysis, we can further investigate an incident by selecting investigate on the incident's details page. And this action opens the investigation graph, which is a visual tool that helps us to identify entities involved in the attack and the relationships between those entities. If the incident involves multiple alerts over time, we can also review the alert timeline and correlations between alerts. Okay, so we have the lab number 1, guys. Create detections and perform investigations using Microsoft Sentinel. And this lab has different exercises. The number 1 will be to activate a Microsoft security rule to get the hands-on with the concepts that we just described with this module 7. Number 2, we are going to create a playbook. 3, we are going to create a schedule query. 4, we're going to explore the entity behavior analytics. 5, we're going to understand detection modeling. 6, we are going to conduct attacks. 7, we are going to create detections. And 8, we're going to investigate uh, incidents. And well, there's more exercises. A continuation is to create a scene parsers, creating a workbook, and 3, using a repository. But well, first, I will recommend you, if you would like to follow me on this at the same time, to start loading your labs, guys. My authenticated session should be already expired, so I need to authenticate again. So just give me a second to start loading the lab. And let me check on the calendar here. And clicking on launch. Okay, so this is going to start preloading, and this is going to take a couple of minutes. While this is loading, we can return to the logic app deployment to finishing up with this demonstration. Now, we have different options to create the workflows within this logic app, sorry. We can use code, integrate an IDE, and get the publish profile and publish for it. But the most, let's say, intuitive tool to create the logic app design is to use the built-in workflow in Designer. So I can click here to create a workflow. And I can click here to click on add. And I need a name for this. Let's say that we can call it as workflow 1. And we can select a state type, stateful or stateless. Select the stateful. Once that we have the workflow 1, I can click on the name on it. And on the section for developer at the left menu, we can see that we have the option to use code or to use the designer. In this case, I will decide to use the designer. It's going to be more easier to use for any type of user role. And from here, we can start navigating about for the multiple types of logic apps connectors, for example. And we can start by adding a trigger. And then we can look up a built-in list of connectors that can function as triggers, built-in or Azure ones. For example, a blob can be a trigger. When a new blob is added or modified in a certain storage, this could be a condition that it will act as a trigger. However, I don't have any storage yet. But well, let's say that this is one on it. So this is my first connector. If I would like to add an action after a new blob is created, that would be my condition for my trigger. Then you are looking for actions. What will happen when a new blob is detected into your reference storage? So I don't know. Let's say that I want to, and you can use a main search connectors. I can scroll down to see the possible operations that copies on files, renaming files, creating files with FTP. So you can imagine the number of connectors available for key vaults, sending messages, or I can use the search. Because I was telling you that there is connector from third-party services. For example, we can search for something in Google Drive or something. Oh, this is going to be, well, couldn't find any results. Well, let's search for something with Microsoft. content moderator, dynamics, fact set, defender. For example, we can defender advanced threat protection, Microsoft Kaisala, Sentinel. Sentinel is including two different possible actions, like generating an alert in Sentinel, bookmarking, create and update a bookmark, entities, get DNS, get IPs, and so on. So we can select it as an action or get a watch list by alias. However, if it when there is a connector, usually we need to associate the values parameters. If it is for a blob trigger, then I need to specify into the subscription that I do have permissions, selecting a valid storage account. And for Microsoft Sentinel, this is asking me for sign in, for example, to detect a tenant and a Sentinel service. I have two, so I will need to select one of the two, the Sentinel one or the other Sentinel, for example. But I can start adding more and more actions. For example, create a from simple to more complex workflow, for example. Okay, the lab already finished loading. So we are into the lab for module 7. Module 7 is including an exercise 1 to modify a Microsoft security rule, exercise 2 to create a playbook, 3 to create a schedule query, 4 to explore entity behavior analytics, 5 to understand detection modeling, 6 to conduct attacks, 7 for create detections, and 8 investigate incidents also. And actually, there's a 9 create a SIM parsers, 10 create workbooks, and 11. I think that this will be the last one. Use repositories in Microsoft Sentinel. Yeah, you have completed the lab, but there is a module 8 levels with other n number of exercises on it. But well, we're not going to finish with all these exercises because everyone will take some time, but we can start with a couple. What's the expectation for the exercise 1? To activate a Microsoft security rule from Sentinel service and creating a schedule query, for example. Okay, so the context says you are a security operations analyst working at a company that implemented Microsoft Sentinel, and you must learn how to detect and mitigate threats using Microsoft Sentinel. First, you need to filter the alerts coming from Defender for Cloud into Microsoft Sentinel by severity. First, we need to activate the Microsoft security rule. So we need to be located on Win1 computer, which is the case of my actual condition. And we need to sign in as an admin and as a local admin and a password to the virtual machine. Then we need to sign into the portal. I'm already into the portal. And we need to sign in with our credentials. That is, I remember I'm not using the credentials built in into the lab because I don't have a subscription there. And the enter the password, okay. In the search bar, okay, we're looking for Sentinel here, so I'm already there. So select your Sentinel workspace. So let's select the Sentinel one. Then we need to select our Sentinel workspace that we created in the previous lab. Select Analytics for the configuration. Scroll down, Configuration, and Analytics. By default, you will see the active rules on it. And I know that I have only one. Then we need to select Create Incidents based on Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Okay, select Analytics. By default, you will see the active rules. Select the create incident based on Microsoft Defender. Okay, this rule was activated by the Defender for Cloud connector that we just configured in module 6 and exercise 1 task number 4. So we need to return because I did not complete that. What was the rule? It was the exercise 1 and task number 4. Okay, exercise 1 is this one, task number 4. Connect to Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Well, apparently it's a short one. In this task, okay, from the data connectors tab, search for the Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So I need to go back a little bit to data connectors, and then I need to look for Defender, and I'm looking for the Defender for Cloud connector, the number 2. Then we need to click on Open Connectors page. In the configuration area under subscription, select the checkbox for Azure Pass. Under and slide the status option to the right to indicate connected. The status should be now connected and bidirectional sync should be enabled. Yeah. Then scroll down and under the create incidents recommended. Select enable. And this option creates an analytic rule automatically for this service. So you can manually add it later if not enabled here, or change its configuration within the analytics blade. Okay. So apparently now we can return towards number 7. So again, just return to Sentinel, then to Analytics. By default, we should see the active rules. And then we can see the creating incidents based on Microsoft Defender for Cloud. That is this number 2. So the rule was activated by Defender. Okay. On the right table, the right below, select the edit button. Scroll down to the page and under analytic rule logics, filter by severity option. Select the custom drop-down list. And under low for the severity, unselect low. And go back to the rule. Then select the next automated response. And then select next for review. And then just click on save. Then proceed to the exercise number 2. Congratulations, you have successfully completed this exercise. So click on next to advance to the next lab. Okay, let's complete this exercise 2 and then we can move on to module 8. Because we're at the time of the first half of this 2-hour session. Let's take a look at the image to see what is the expectation here. Okay, this is going to be an interesting exercise. we are going to integrate Microsoft Teams. So in the task number one, we are going to create a Teams team or channel that will be a security operations center team in Microsoft Teams on. And we are going to use that team or that channel to publish some alerts automatically to automate. Then at the right, we can see the block with a couple of tasks to create a security operations center team in Microsoft Teams, and task 3 to update a playbook in Sentinel. Okay, so this will be an interesting one. The context for this exercise too is that we're a security operations analyst working at a company that implemented Sentinel, and we must learn how to detect and mitigate some threats using Microsoft Sentinel. So now we want to respond and remediate actions that can be run from Sentinel as a routine. So with a playbook, we can help automate and orchestrate our threat response. So by integrate with other systems, both internal and external, and can be set to run automatically in response to specific alerts or incidents, and when triggered by an analytic rule or an automation rule, respectively. So, task number one, we're going to start by creating a security operations center team in Microsoft Teams. So, in Win1 Computer, it is already unlocked from the Edge browser. We need to open Microsoft Teams. So I will just open a new tab. Click here to paste teams.microsoft.com. This is asking me to sign in with. Okay, something is. Well, I will figure it out because I can sign in with this account because maybe this account will have uh, a Microsoft 365 subscription, 39, 65, and 38. And the other one that I'm using, I'm pretty sure. So I will try with this one, see what happens. But I'm pretty sure that here there's no, there will be no subscription. So if there's no subscription, I cannot use Microsoft Teams because I will need to have a subscription. Let's give it a try. In the worst case, then I will need to activate my Azure Pass. Can you please sign in again? Sorry for any inconveniences. The server for resource is disabled. This indicates that a subscription within the tenant has lapsed or that the administrator for this tenant has disabled the application. Well, I was right with my suspicions. Okay. So I will sign in with the provided account. Teams.microsoft.com. I will use this account and with this password. Close any Teams pop-ups that may appear. If not already selected, select Teams on the left menu. Okay, so there is that with a regular tenant, there is a series of pre-configured teams, for example. If not already selected the teams on the left menu, then at the bottom, select Join or Create a Team. So we'll click here. Then we need to select Create a Team. Here. And then select From Scratch. Then we are going to select what kind of team will this be. A private. Give the team the name. We're going to give the name of SOC. And then select create button. Then in the add members to the SOC screen, select the skip button. Then scroll down the team's blade to locate the newly created SOC team. So we can see it here. And then select the ellipses at the right side of the name and select add channel. Then the channel name will be new alerts. And then select on the add. Okay. So we are done with this task 1. Then task 2, we're going to create a playbook in Microsoft Sentinel. Okay, so here I will not use the in private. I will use the regular one to create the playbook here. Okay, so we're looking for Sentinel. I'm already there. Select your Microsoft Sentinel workspace. Select the community page. Okay. It is under content management and then there's community. Well, let me just so you created there earlier community on the right pane. Select the onboard community content. Is this, and this redirects us to GitHub repository. So I think that we are going to import a project or something, or to a source. On the right, and this will open a new tab in the Microsoft Edge for Microsoft Sentinel GitHub. Select the solutions folder. Solutions. Then next to Sentinel SOAR Essentials. SOAR Essentials. Oh, Sentinel, sorry. SOAR. This one. And then playbooks folder. And then there should be, these are existing playbooks. We're going to take one, the post message teams. And then the post message teams folder, in the README MD box, scroll down to the second quick deployment option. The second, because deploy with alert trigger. And select deploy to Azure button. Okay, the note, very important. Be aware that they are two different Sentinel triggers to use, incident and alert. So make sure that you are selecting the alert, the second one. It says on alert in the playbook name. So that means that we're in the right one. Make sure that your subscription is selected. For resource group, we are going to create a new. And we're going to call RG Playbooks. Region, East US is okay, the default value. Make sure the playbook name is post message teams dash on alert. And select review plus create. If the name is different, go to GitHub and select the deploy with alert trigger playbook. Click on create. Wait for the deployment to finish before proceeding to the next task. That the task 3 will be update a playbook in Sentinel. Okay, so let's click on. In this task, we will update the new playbook that we created with the proper connection information. Okay, we need to return to Sentinel and select our Sentinel workspace, select the automation under configuration. And then we need to select on the active playbooks. Now, I have two already. The SC200 playbook that I just create for test like 20 minutes ago. And the other is the post message. So select the post message. If you do not see the playbook, refresh the Azure portal until we can see it. On the Logic App page for post message Teams on alert, I need to click on the green link. We need to click on the edit. Requires me to sign in again. And then, okay, select the first block, the Microsoft Sentinel. And then select on change connection. Select add a new, and then select on sign in. In the new window, select your Azure subscription. Now here, I need to use this account, the LX3965 and 38 is this one, and this password. User account does not exist in Contoso. Cannot access the application. Yeah. So I need to do something in this in private. However, well, let's see what happens. Confirm the account, promo code 6PGLVK. Okay, we need to fill this information. SC200, last name, address line. And then need to agree, sign up. Now, well, this is going to take a couple of minutes here. Now, this is not working because this is expecting to use the same account, because here I need to connect to an account that has the M365 subscription that includes the license from Teams to sign in. And this is the one that has the permission, that has the license. But it says that does not exist in the tenant Contoso, so it's sign out and sign in again with different Azure Active Directory user account. Cannot access the application because I have a register application, the app service in that tenant. The account needs to be added as an external user in the tenant first sign out and sign in. This is associated with the permissions, but because I'm using two accounts, one for Teams and another for the Azure subscription, so what I will need to do is to create, once that I finish activating the Azure Pass, create a new Sentinel, import the rule, create the playbook again, and complete the steps to register into the other tenant, the application. And that will work. But well, let's first try to focus on the next module, because actually this is the end. This one. So when you just complete that lab, you shouldn't experience the same problem as me, because you will use the only one account that you have. So I was trying to use the account that I had with my Azure subscription active, but that account doesn't have a Microsoft Teams license on it, and that is why I cannot associate the Teams application with that, because it will fail, and I cannot create the Teams, the SOC team, because the lack of the license. Okay. Give me a second to start loading the module number 8. Let's take a look at it. This is going to be a short module, so after finishing with this, we can give it a second try to that. To that lab. Something's happening here. Just give me a second. Okay. Module 8, and the final one for this SC200. Perform threat hunting in Microsoft Sentinel. Threat hunting concepts in Sentinel, and 2 topics. Describe the threat hunting concepts for use with Microsoft Sentinel, and define a threat hunting hypothesis for use in Microsoft Sentinel. The term threat hunting, most commonly used definition, is the idea that we are proactively hunting through our environment for a threat or a set of activities that we have not previously detected. The not previously detected part is what differentiates threat hunting from incident responses or alert triage. So threat hunting should be a continual process. We usually hunt based on a hypothesis, and the hypothesis might start with a operational threat intelligence, and then we need to list the attackers, the tactics, and the techniques. Hypothesis can search for a specific technique, not an indicator like an IP address. So if malicious activity is identified, we might have discovered the attacker earlier in the attack process before they have an opportunity to exfiltrate data. So we start at the top of our cycle with our hypotheses. Our hypotheses help us to plan out what we are going to hunt for, which requires us to understand where we are going to hunt and how we will do it. So the hunting cycle doesn't stop when we execute the hunt. So there are still several phases that we need to conduct throughout the life cycle, including responding to anomalies. Even if we don't find an active threat, there will be activities to perform. So routine tasks should include setting up new monitoring, improving our detection capabilities. Everything done in threat hunting should be documented. Documentation for the hunt should include the what, the how, and why, input and output, how to replicate the hunt, and next steps. So hunting start with a hypothesis with factors to consider for a hypothesis. So we should keep it achievable. That means that it is recommended to not perform a hunt where we know that we have no hope of finding results because we do not have the data available, or we have insufficient knowledge about the threat to understand how to find it. We should keep it a scope narrow, and it's recommended to avoid broad a hypothesis such as I'm going to hunt for strange logons. So such as hypothesis will fail to define what the results could mean. We should keep it time bound. Are we looking for any login since the beginning of our logs? Or are we looking for last week, the last day, the time bound that also is used in documentation? We should keep it useful and efficient. We want to target threats that maybe we don't have adequate coverage for in our detections. And these might be things that we know that we have previously missed or that we haven't detected. We should keep it related to the threat model that we are defending against. So we can start with the basics and incrementally mature organization threat hunting capabilities. Now, what is the base that we are going to use for for hunting for threats, basically? And if you remember the MITRE attack, actually into Sentinel, we can find a section into the threat management that says MITRE. And this same MITRE attack framework matrix should match with the one that we can find into the MITRE attack ORG page or something with the tactics on the top and the techniques on every column. Tactics on the columns and the techniques on every row, for example. And by clicking and selecting each of this, we can see the type of tactic basically with an ID, number of detections, a description, the tactic that represents, coverage details, simulated coverage, and so on. Lesson 2 for threat hunting with Microsoft Sentinel. The topics: use queries to hunt for threats and save key findings with bookmarks. Sorry. And observe threats over time with a live stream also. We can use the search and the query tools in Sentinel to hunt for security threats and tactics throughout our environment. So hunting queries enable us to filter through large amount of events and security data sources to identify for potential threats or track down known or expected threats. So the hunting page in Sentinel has built-in queries, and these queries can guide our hunting process and can help us to pursue the appropriate hunting paths to uncover issues in our environment. The hunting page will provide a list of all hunting queries. So we can filter and sort queries by name, by provider, by data source, by results, and by tactics. And we can save queries by selecting the favorite start icon for the query in the list. When a query is selected as a favorite, it runs automatically each time that we open the hunting page. Sentinel uses the MITRE attack framework to set categories and order queries by tactics. Selecting any tactic will filter the available queries by selected tactic. The tactics may include initial access, execution, persistent, privilege escalation, defensive action, credential access, discovery, lateral movement, collection, command and control, exfiltration, and so on. That goes, for example, at initial access are tactics that the adversary uses to gain entry to a network by exploiting some vulnerabilities or configuration weaknesses in public facing systems. In the privilege escalation, these tactics are tactics associated that when an adversary uses to gain higher level privilege on a system, such as a local administrator or root. For credential access, here we can find tactics deployed on systems and network to steal usernames and credentials for reuse. In the collection, tactics that an adversary uses to gather and consolidate the information they were targeting as part of the objective. For the exfiltration, there are tactics used to move data from the compromised network to a system or network that's fully under control of the attacker. To hunt for threats to an environment or to an organization environment, we have to review large amount of log data for evidence of malicious behavior. And during this process, we might find events that we want to remember, that we need to revisit or to analyze as part of validating potential hypotheses and understanding the full story of a compromise. So bookmarking Azure Sentinel can help us to hunt for threats by preserving the queries that we run in Azure Sentinel, along with the query results that we deem relevant. So we can also record our contextual observations, and we can reference our findings by adding notes and tags. Bookmark data is visible to us and our teammates for easy collaboration. We can see it here into the rectangle here, and we need to select at least one to set the bookmark, for example. We can use the hunting live stream to test queries against live events as they occur. Live stream provides interactive sessions that can notify us when Sentinel finds matching events for our query. A live stream is always based on a query, and typically we use the query to narrow down streaming log events. So only the events that are related to our threat hunting effort appear. And we can use a live stream to test the new queries against live events, to generate notifications for threats, to launch investigations, and live stream queries refresh every 30 seconds and will generate Azure notifications of any new result from the query. To create a live stream from the hunting page in Sentinel, we can select the live stream tab and then select new live stream from the toolbar. On the new live stream page, we can specify a name for the live stream session and the query that will provide results for the session. Notifications for live stream events will appear in our Azure portal notifications. And there is a lab for the module 8 that is for threat hunting in Microsoft Sentinel, and there is a couple of exercises. First, performing threat hunting in Sentinel, and second, threat hunting using notebooks with Microsoft Sentinel. All right, so it is time for labs then. So let's let's return to the previous lab exercise and see if I can just complete it because we are close. Well, I am close, sorry. Um, so what do I need to do? What do I need to do here? Basically, I need to finish creating the subscription. No, I need to finish creating the subscription here. and then create the Sentinel, then go for community, then import the playbook template and create it in the new tenant that will register the app, and that will identify that into that tenant um, that account exists, and there should not. Now there is like a conflict by using the STS token service to authenticate that account because it's actually registered into another tenant. So there is a conflict there with the tenant that I'm trying to authenticate with that account, and that is why it's failing. So performing the operation again will register to the right tenant to the right account. So when I need to authenticate by accessing to the connector, it will not fail like in this case for now. So let's wait for this subscription to become active. Um, and then we can just go back a few steps and try it again with that process. Like I was explaining from the beginning, the expectation will be we have the team already and we have the team in the right account. But in this part is where the playbook created is using the tenant where I have the subscription active that is not the same account. So this different into using one account for one and another for the other is where the authentication is failing because actually Teams is and the playbook or the Logic app is registered as an application in Azure AD for pass the authentication, for outsource the authentication. Okay, from here I just need to create at least a Sentinel. The user might not have enough permissions. Try refreshing the page. Okay, let's sign out and sign in again just to make sure. Okay, the password should be this one. Okay, let's create. We're going to see a prompt to create a workspace. Let's create a LA. Well, let's call it this the module 07. LAW for SC200. Review create. Final validation. Then the workspace will be created on top of this, the Sentinel. Once that we can see a Sentinel, um, we go for the community and try to import the connector. Okay, let's create the workspace. Oh, the final expectation will be that once that we have the playbook, we're going to simulate an alert. And when the alert uses this, um, the event that generates the posting the message on Teams with the API connector, we should see the message posted into this new alert channel that we create into the SOC team. So that message will not be posted by a person, will be posted by the playbook, basically. So that's the expectation. Let's perform a refresh here until we see the workspace. We should see. Okay, we can see it. Let's click on add. And now the Sentinel will be created on top of this workspace. And once that we can see the workspace, that I will try to import the solution from the community to create this, but in the new subscription. So, well, this is going to take a couple of minutes. Meanwhile, you can post your questions in the Q&A, guys. So, so far everything is good, and we can continue. Also, uh, Gerardo is taking on all of your questions. He's the moderator. Okay, so now it's adding the Microsoft Sentinel. Now we have the Sentinel here. Now I go to community to start importing, going to onboard, locating the solutions folder, if I remember right. Then the Sentinel SOAR. Then the playbooks, and then I need to locate the post message in Teams. And with this, the I think that yeah, the second one that says deploy with an alert trigger, deploy to Azure. And then I will select the same resource group, the same name, review and create, and clicking on create. Now we have a deployment in progress. From that, we are just importing that from the community as a template. Deployment is complete, so we can go to resource group. We can search for playbooks. No, it's not playbook, sorry. It's a logic app. And we can click on this one and click on edit. And okay, to update the playbook, we can click on the first box and change connection link. Here we're going to add a new. We're going to sign in, and will try to use the same account. This time should not fail. Then I see that did not fail. Um, Select add, sign in the new window, select your subscription, admin credentials when prompted. The last line of block should now read connected to your admin username. Okay. Now select the second block, the alert get incident. Select change connection link. And we can see that, okay, that the connection that has your Azure admin username under display name, that has your Azure, sorry, your Azure admin username here. That is the second. The last line of the block should now read connected to your admin. Second, okay. Yeah, connected to my admin. Now select the third block for connections. This is the connection from Microsoft Teams. Select on add a new and select your Azure admin credentials when prompted. Okay, it's loading now. As you can see, there is like a template into the message that will include parameters like it will pull information like severity, the Sentinel alerts with a title and status and number, a created time, a URL, and entities, and so on. So we're just going to see a message with a format actually, and the format is coming from the template connected to our. So the blog has now been renamed to a post message version 3. We can see it on the top. At the end of the theme field, select the X to clear the content. The field will be changed to a dropdown, and we will select the theme that is the SOC. Do the same for the channel and select the new alerts that we just created. I just created previously before the Azure Pass subscription activation. Select on save at the end, and then the logic I will be used in the future lab. Okay, now we can proceed to the exercise 3. To create a schedule query. And we are going to use the post message theme alert automation in this, in the first task, create a schedule query that tests the new rule, for example. Okay, so let's follow this one. We have some context for this exercise. This is that we are a security operations analyst working at a company that implemented Microsoft Sentinel, and we must learn how to detect and mitigate threats using Sentinel. So after connecting our data sources to Sentinel, we create custom analytic rules to help discover threats and anomalous behavior in our environment. So analytic rules will search for specific events or set of events across our environment. Alert us when certain events, thresholds, or conditions are reached, and generate incidents for our SOC to triage and investigate and respond to threats with automated tracking and remediation process. So the first task will be to create a schedule query. In this task, we will create a schedule query and connect it to the Teams channel that we created in the previous example. This type of alert is the one that we have more. So we need to be authenticated with the user administrator. I will return to Sentinel, and we select the workspace, then select the analytics section on configuration, and then we need to select the create button, and then we are going to select the schedule query. Okay, in the analytic rule wizard on the general tab, we will type the name as the Azure AD role assignment audit trail. So let's wait for this system to finish loading. It's taking so much time. Okay, now finish loading on. For the name, we're going to name it as Azure AD role assignment audit trail. For tactics, select persistence, tactics, severity says low, exfiltration, collection, lateral movement, credential, a defensive action, persistence. For severity, select low. Select next for set rule logic. The status will be enabled. For the rule query, we will paste the following KQL. Now, a warning here, when using the paste function to the virtual machine, an extra pipe characters could be added. Make sure that you use Notepad first to paste the following query. Okay. I will open Notepad into the virtual machine, and then we'll just click here to paste. Okay. It's important to not make any move while this is being pasted. Now from here, so apparently everything is good. Select the view query results. And we can see no result found from the custom time range, says. You should not receive any results. If you receive an error, please review that the query appears. This is not an error, it's just no results. Okay. Close the logs window. Okay, query appears just like the previous KQL. Close the logs window by selecting the upper right, the X, and select OK to discard the save changes to go back to the wizard. Okay. To the analytics rule wizard, create a new schedule rule. Analytics rule wizard, create new schedule rule. Enter the alert enrichment. Okay. Alert enrichment, select entity mapping and select the following values. For the entity type drop down, select account. For the identifier drop down, select full name. For the value, initiated by UPN, user principal name. Then select add new entity and select the following values. For the entity type drop down, select IP. And for the identifier drop down, select address. To scroll down and under the query scheduling, then run query every 5 minutes and look for data from the last. This will be in day format and it would be 1. We are purposely generating many incidents for the same data, and this enables the lab to use these alerts as quick as possible. So under the alert threshold, leave the value unchanged. So is greater than and 0, since we want to generate a single alert every time it runs. Then select the next incident settings. On the incident settings tab, review the default options. So alert grouping disabled, incident settings that create incident from alerts triggered by this analytic rule, and is set to enable. Select the next automated response. And on the automated response tab, under the alert automation, select the playbook, the classic, post message teams on alert you have created. So under automation rules, select on add a new. add a new on the top. And for the automation rule name, we need to enter tier 2. Oops. Oh, this is copied to the clipboard, but I need to use the type text, clipboard text, and Control V. The function is not to copy. It's not properly configured. Somebody made a mistake in the instruction because it should say tier 2 because this, the somebody just confused the plus with the or the 2 asterisk with the plus. This code makes that the entire tier 2 as something to copy. Some mistake in the instructions. Okay, so it only will tier 2. For the action, select assign an owner. And then select assign to me, to the administrator. Then select apply. And then next to review. And then after validation to select create. Hmm. I just missed something apparently. Okay, next to review. Okay, validation pass. Test the new rule after. I'll select create at the end, of course. Now in this task, we will test our new schedule query rule. Okay, in the search bar of the portal, we need to go to Azure Active Directory. And we will select users and select a user Christy Klein. In the list, so well, Christy Klein profile appears or is displayed. Then we need to select assigned roles under management at the left menu. Then we will select on add an assignment. Then we are going to look for the user administrator. We are going to select on add and then select on refresh after a couple of minutes to see the role listed here. Then choose the Christy Klein assign roles and users, and I'll use a space by selecting the X in the top right twice. Okay. Close here. Close here. The overview, then under monitoring, audit logs. Then select the export data settings on the top. Verify that the Microsoft Sentinel Azure Active Directory data connector correctly set up the configuration to send data to our login and workspace by reviewing the information under diagnostic settings. I think that I need to configure this to send events to log analytics workspace and create this ES1 diagnostic settings. In order to export signing data, the organization need Azure AD P1 or P2 license. Let's start the free trial. Okay, I will activate it for P2. This you create an alert for Sentinel. Okay, let's return here and click on save and see what happens. I will return and well, should see a connection here. Close the page by selecting on the X. Back into the controls of the log, select refresh. Now, here, maybe a previous task that I did not complete was expecting to, with the role change that I just made to Christy Klein, those should be the events that triggers the alert with the query that I just copy and paste for the rule that I just create. So because I just create the diagnostic setting after, maybe that is not triggering the event or the alert in this case. So I will just return to Azure AD and repeat the steps for users, for Christy Klein, for the assigned roles. I will remove this role and I will add the assignment again for user administrator and add it again. Now at this time I'm generating events, but after configuring the diagnostic settings. So I will expect to see that log analytics is ingesting those events and that the rule is reacting on it because previously there were no events connected to the log workspace. So I just wait a couple of minutes until I can see the role again. So, okay. So like referring to you see the entry for the category role management. So I will just return to monitoring and to the audit logs. And we should see entries for the category role management. Well, I don't see it. But well, the last one was reported 3 minutes ago. But I did run those events no more than 2 minutes ago or 1 minute ago. But I don't see it. Okay, select your Sentinel workspace, the incident menu under threat manual. Let's start looking at this Sentinel, following the last steps. And then select our Sentinel workspace, then select the incidents menu. Under threat management, incidents, select the auto refresh toggle. No incidents were found. You should see the newly created incident. The event that triggers the alert may take more than 5 minutes to process. So you may continue with the next exercise and return to this point. Okay, so this eventually will happen. And at the end, after looking at this image, we can see that this is going to be with the audit logs and the incidents, something that will trigger the schedule query from the analytic rule to post a message to team. So eventually we will see it on it, but it's going to take some time. Okay, so we are 4 minutes before the end of today's session, guys. So with this module, with these two modules for today, we just covered partially um, the agenda for these 4-day sessions that covers the modules. Tomorrow, we'll have the exam prep session. That is going to be some sort of a wrap up of the entire 4 sessions and the entire 8 modules. That includes a couple of mm, practice questions on it with the presentation. So we will have another 2 hours. Um, Tomorrow for the exam prep. So you have some homework, and in the next 3 minutes, we're going to take the 30-minute break. Like with the previous days, we have the 2 hour and a half session for the lab and Q&A. So you will get your hands on into your labs, and you can ask all of your questions from that session. It's another On24 session with a different link. So we are going to take the 30-minute break, and after that, please connect to the other session. We will be there. I will present this homework for day 4, so you can see the topics that you need to take from Microsoft Learn. And you can also start working with the labs exercises for module 7 and 8. The number 7 especially has like a 10 or 11 exercises. So with those 2 hours and a half, uh, uh, hopefully that will be enough time for you to complete those. Even if you're not experiencing any issues, like in my case, for example, like using the 2 accounts or 2 directories. So, guys, I would like you to thank you so much for your time today, attention and participation. So let's take the 30-minute break and see you into the next session for lab and Q&A. Thank you for your time, your attention, and see you in 30 minutes.